Hey, welcome back. In this video, I want to talk to you about 3 principles that I've learned over 5 years of medical school that help me study more effectively. Essentially, it helps me work smarter and not harder and use my time as efficiently as possible. If you're new here, my name is Jerzen. I'm a 5th year medical student, and on this channel, we talk about tech, productivity, and studying. We're going to talk about 3 major principles. The first one is the Feynman technique. This ensures that you are studying things in a better way, which helps you understand better, rather than rote memorization. The second principle is the 80-20 rule, which sort of helps you pick out the things that you need to really focus on and nail the basics. And finally, we're going to talk about a note-taking and revision method that I use called active recall. The Feynman technique was first introduced by the theoretical physicist, Dr. Richard Feynman. Essentially, if you ask yourself why at every step of the way while you're studying, it ensures that you're understanding the content instead of rote memorization. One thing I've taken away from medical school is that studying is a lot easier when you understand things rather than trying to remember them word for word. The best ways I find to implement these are to A, ask why at every single step. So why does this happen? And then once you get the answer for that, figure out why that happens as well. You'll get to a point where asking why seems really silly or redundant, and that's the point where you know you've hit the basics. The second way I implement the Feynman technique while studying is to try and explain things to a friend. Whether that's a classmate or another colleague of mine, I would explain things in my own words and try to teach it to them. I can tell you from experience that if you can teach a concept to somebody, that means you definitely understand it. Now, when you implement the Feynman technique and ask yourself why at every single step, eventually you're going to hit the basics. And this is the second thing I want to talk about, nailing the basics using the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule, or the Pareto principle, as some of you may know it as, basically says that 80% of your efforts come from 20% of inputs. This may seem a little counterintuitive when it comes to things like healthcare studies like medicine and dentistry, but I can tell you for a fact that this does really help. Nailing the basic subjects down like anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology help you in understanding how the body works, how things are supposed to work, and why it's not working, and how to treat them. This has enabled me to understand things a lot better. This has really helped me in understanding how a sick body functions, and treatment makes a lot more sense. Instead of just memorizing certain antibiotics or certain drugs for a certain disease, you sort of understand the mechanisms underlying it, and this really helps you remember things for the long term. If you're in your first couple of years of medical school, this is a great time for you to sit down and nail those basics. But if you are like me in my final year and you think your basics are a little janky, don't worry about it, because a lot of us do forget things over time. So you can go online, you can find flashcard decks, or you can find some sort of articles and read them in your free time. Now that we've understood something and now that we know what to study, we need to talk about note-taking, because note-taking is pretty inevitable when you're a student. When it comes to note-taking, I think it might be helpful for me to talk about how I used to take my notes. I used to summarize my textbook into my note-taking app, and then I would highlight it and then reread it as revision. This is something called passive recall, when you're passively recalling the information, in this case by rereading it. And this has proven time and time to not be the most efficient way to study. You can eventually learn it, but you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. The opposite of that is something known as active recall, and that's what you should be implementing. The easiest way to do active recall is when you write your notes, instead of writing them down as big blocks of text, write them underneath a question and write the answer to that question as your note. So when you're revising it, instead of rereading the text, you're going to try answering that question, and that enables your brain to work actively to remember it. And it's completely fine to get it wrong, because that proceeds to do something known as hypercorrection, which will then help you remember the concept better for next time. Active recall can be done in a lot of ways, so you can do questions and answers, or my personal favorite is to use flashcards on apps like RemNote and Enki. But I would say keep it simple. Even if you just look at a concept and write it down in your own words every single time, that's still active recall, and it's still better than passive recall, so try to study in a way that works for you. So, to summarize, understand concepts instead of rote memorization. This helps you remember things for the long term. Nail your basics, because this helps you with the understanding. And finally, revise actively instead of passively. This is going to be a massive game changer. With that said, that's it for this video. I haven't made videos in months at this point, so I'm trying to get back into the YouTube game. I hope this video was fun, and I hope this video was informative as well. If there's a particular video idea you'd like me to make sure you comment it down below. If a lot of people do comment it, or if it seems particularly interesting to me, I would love to make it. With that said, I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.